Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another session at the A4Q Testing Summit, edition 2025. I'm excited to be here with Stephen Platten, who is an award-winning tester and QA professional with over 18 years of experience across industries, blending a passion for complex problem-solving, process improvement, and personal growth through Stoic philosophy. In this presentation, Stefan will be discussing Stoicism and software testing, ancient philosophy meets modern methods. Before I give over to you, Stefan, I just want to remind everybody that there will be a Q&A session at the end, so pop your questions into the chat and then we can discuss it afterwards. So, Stefan, I'm giving you the stage to tell us a little bit more about your presentation.
Thanks, Helene. Hi, everybody. I'm going to be bringing a presentation on Stoicism and software testing. So probably not the kind of topic that you were expecting on a software testing summit like this, but I appreciate A4Q inviting me on to talk about it. I've done this talk once or twice before at a few different conferences, and I'm coming at it from a slightly different angle. The purpose of this presentation is more around helping testers find some solace in some of the kind of chaos that we're living on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to what's the next most cutting-edge tool, AI testing technique that you might have heard of that's out there in the market. And I hope you enjoy the presentation. Feel free to ask questions as we're going through in the comments in the chat, and we'll pick them up at the end. So no conference talk would be free without a bit of a slide about me. So this is a collage of some of the things that kind of broadly describe who I am and where I'm coming from, and I'll bring it all back into Stoicism and what that is and what we're talking about. So the top left-hand corner there, you can see a little place called Hull on the east coast of England. That's where I live. That's where I'm born and bred and live at the moment. You can see a picture of a fighter aircraft and the Royal Air Force symbol. So large part of my career throughout my life, the last 13 or 14 years, was in the Air Force as an avionics engineer. And that's where I got into testing through effectively trials and evaluations. So testing military systems, applications, weapons, etc. And that kind of got me into testing through that. I'm a big volunteer, so I do volunteer with the STEM projects where I go into schools talking about science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Also talk about testing a great deal. I've recently started with the UK and Ireland Testing Board as their head of accreditation. I'm an avid reader. Hopefully these images make sense. I like to lift heavy circles, which is the weightlifting in the corner there. I'm a massive nerd, so I also like to play Warhammer 40k in the top right. And then the two things that kind of brought me to Stoicism, there's a picture of me looking kind of slightly downtrodden. The reason I got to Stoicism, which is important for the context of the conference talk, is a very challenging period of time in my life where a loss of control, a loss of understanding of what I had in my control, led me to look for answers to very difficult questions. I found Stoicism, learned about Stoicism, applied that to my life, and saw really positive outcomes. And then thought, well, what happens if I apply the same things and ideas to my career as a tester? And this has led me to kind of where I am now, and what this presentation kind of comes in. Okay, so testing, in my experience and the experience of people hopefully on this call, on this talk, is it often feels like chaos. For a number of reasons. I've pulled out some examples of what I've seen constantly. So ambiguous requirements that are poorly written, poorly drafted, late provided to you. Works on my machine is quite a good one. I've heard many times where your machine isn't set up, your application isn't the right version history, your code base is out of date, your environment isn't configured, your environment isn't connected, the architecture is different, etc., etc. Despite all our best testing efforts and all the work that we do and all the automations, test suites we build and all the tools that we implement and the processes we produce, we still find bugs in production regardless. There's constant last minute changes, so not just to the requirements of the software itself, but also to what testing is like. So if we pick the example of AI, how quickly AI has forced people to kind of change very quickly what their approach to testing is and isn't. And then there's also obviously the time pressure and budget pressure that we all feel. Testing is one of those things that often gets squeezed, often gets pushed, often gets kind of challenged more than other parts of the IT delivery systems that we work within. So I'm hoping through this presentation, this talk, we could find a better way to handle this chaos. So the answer for me is a philosophy that's 2,000 years old. So bear with me. I'm going to get to how this links back to testing, I promise, but it's important to set out the stall of what Stoicism is. So a big thing I'll start off with is, I'm talking about Stoicism with a capital S, not lowercase Stoicism. So Stoicism as opposed to the philosophy, not Stoicism as in terms of how someone is Stoic, which is slightly different. If you do a bit of a Google search, you'll find the differences between the two. So Stoicism is founded or built on what we'd call the big three. It's actually built by an individual called Zeno. But the three most famous Stoics, who I'm going to outline to you now, were Marcus Aurelius, who was an ex-emperor of Rome, Epictetus, who was a slave for his entire life, and Seneca, who was a senator who served the Roman Emperor of Nero, who was a very unpleasant individual. So those three people wrote a great deal of literature and books and give a lot of talks, and I pulled out some of their kind of three most famous quotes, and I promise this will get to testing. This is just me trying to set an out stall. So one from Marcus: the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. So he's already talking about quality there. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. So it's not what happens, it's our perception of what happens, which dictates how we react to that situation. Demand that things don't happen as you wish, but wish things happen as they do. So Epictetus talks about accepting reality as it is, as opposed to kind of distressing ourselves with the reality that isn't present. So as testers, we need to work in a grounded reality of we don't have all the control that we want. We don't have all the budget that we have. We don't have all the tools that we want to use. We don't have all the skills that we might want to cultivate. We've got to work with what we've got. And then Seneca, testers, in my experience, really suffer with kind of having to prove themselves a lot and imposter syndrome. So a really famous Seneca quote is, we suffer more in our imagination than in reality. We think we aren't good enough for the people that we work with, and we aren't doing enough. And most of the time, in my experience, testers are very hardworking and actually are, and it's kind of just what we've got ourselves to. So that's the big three, the kind of more famous people. If you Google Stoicism, there's probably the three people that are going to come up. And now I want to talk about some basic principles of Stoicism. There's way more of these, but this is just the 101. So the dichotomy of control is probably one of the most biggest, which is a Stoic should only focus on what they can influence, and the only thing we can generally influence is our thoughts, right? So we can't control what we think, we can't control what we feel, but we can control what we act upon those thoughts and feelings. Amore fati is another very famous one, which is your love of fate. So we don't wish for things to be any different to us as they've happened. We look at them as opportunities to be good people and look at those things as challenges to overcome, as opposed to things that should beat us down. And then pragmatic action. Stoicism always advocates for extreme pragmatism, which as a tester, I'm a very pragmatic person. I know what best principles are. I know what we should do in all the best scenarios. What's the gold-plated solution? 9 times out of 10, I can never implement that. I've got to implement the best thing I can. And that's me being pragmatic. So again, it's about staying calm and rational in the face of the things in front of you. So you're probably still asking now, we're on slide 5. Steve, when are we actually going to talk about testing? It's been 8 minutes in. We haven't talked about testing yet. I promise we are going to get there. So why I think Stoicism as a philosophy is built for testers, and why thinking about Stoic principles has allowed me to become a better tester. I'm hoping I can outline some paradigms here. So I've already spoke about the dichotomy of control, where we only need to focus on the things that we can influence. So testers live in a world where we have limited control over what's happening. We have limited control of the budget, the code base, the requirements that are coming in, the environment that we're working in, the people we work with. Nearly all of those things are completely out of our control. Focus on the things that we can control. So the quality of the test cases that I build, the understanding I have of a technology or a framework, I can control those things. Amore fati again, the love of fate. So bugs and failures and issues are opportunities to learn and improve. An environment not being suitable or not being usable, or the test data being a mess, or the tool not working on your machine, or you can't install something, they're just opportunities for you to improve and opportunities to get better at your craft, as opposed to something that's going to break you down. And then pragmatic action. So this is about testers being critical thinkers, logically thinking about a problem under pressure and coming back with a pragmatic, calm, non-emotionally influenced response to that problem statement. So I think there's a real read across to what testers need to do if they apply those 3 basic principles. I'd like to tackle a little bit about the misconceptions around Stoicism. When I've done this talk in the past, I've had several bits of feedback. So this slide is trying to address this feedback. And again, I reiterated it earlier. I'm talking about Stoicism with a capital S, not a lowercase s. They're two different things. So these are misconceptions, and also misconceptions that I think align massively to testers as well. So there is a real read across. So Stoics, if you Google a Stoic, it's someone who's emotionless and doesn't feel empathy. So a Stoic isn't someone who isn't emotional. It's just someone who isn't completely controlled by their emotions. So as a tester, I deeply care about the quality of the products that we release to our customers, to our clients, to our fellow human beings. But I totally understand that I am not in complete control of the quality of the thing that comes out. So I as much as I would be, I can get very annoyed that the quality of the thing we're producing isn't great. As long as I know that I've tried my best to help get the quality there where I think it needs to be, I'm comfortable with accepting that the quality of that thing as it's released. That might sound very challenging to some who might argue you have complete control of the quality of a product. I would argue that you don't. Another common misconception is Stoics means passive acceptance, and you might be thinking that I'm currently advocating for you to just kind of roll over and let people do what you want with you. It's like, no, all I'm asking is that testers should purely focus on the things that they can control. So if I can use some examples, if you think about, I'll give you an actual real case example from someone I've worked with. I asked the developer to work through with me the unit testing that they'd done on a piece of code that they'd written. They basically said, I haven't done any. I've nothing to show you. I'm not interested in going through it with you. I could get incredibly emotionally distressed by that action, get very angry, criticize the individual, and kind of what you're doing. You're not allowing me to do my work. Instead, I just accepted that was a risk, that part of the code base wasn't unit tested, and looked at where could I address the coverage that might have been missed as part of those unit tests. And again, it's just focusing on things I can control. Stoicism is obviously occasionally described as being very pessimistic or focused on the worst case. There is actually a Stoic practice where you Metatio Malorum, where you imagine the worst case scenario, not to kind of make you feel worried and anxious, but to disarm that thing if it ever happens. So the kind of thing that I look at is, I know there will be bugs in production, regardless of how well my tests are written. There's quite a high likelihood we'll miss something. I'm prepared for that thing happening. I have processes in place. I have tests that I can execute. I have actions I can take back to roll back that problem, roll back that change, and improve it if it happens. And then the last one, which is also a very common misconception, which is testers reject pleasure and they kind of don't want anything in life. They take no enjoyment from what they're doing. As a tester, I take great enjoyment and fulfillment in the work that I do. And as a Stoic, I take great enjoyment with the work that I do. I enjoy speaking to people like I am right now. So testers want to find quality and help produce quality for something. Even if they can't control it, they take great pleasure in doing a very good job, and they're very passionate people who take great pleasure in their workload. Stoicism also has something else that's quite common all the way through, which is kind of mantras. Stoics often carry around small tokens or medallions or coins or badges, or in my case, my laptop's covered in stickers that have short, little pithy mantras that are from famous Stoics that help people kind of apply this Stoic thinking and practices back into their work. So I've tried to take some Stoic mantras and then create my own tester versions of them, things to have in the back of your mind that you can maybe just, when that challenging situation occurs, think of this mantra, have it written down, and help it to influence your response to that outcome. So this is a famous quote, which is, "The impediment to action advances action." The full quote is, "What stands in the way becomes the way." So the bugs that we find lead to better systems, right? The more information we can find out about a system, the more that person can be informed about making the decision whether to release it or not. A bug isn't a bad thing to find. A bug thing is generally a good thing to find. If I'd be more upset if we didn't find bugs. Okay. You can leave life right now, the rest of the quote is, and let that dictate your actions. So again, this is how I look at what happens when I release into production. The build could fail at any moment. We could have major issues in production. I don't ignore that fact from happening. I try and prepare for it as best I can. I'm practical in my application of that. So prepare for something bad to happen. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Quite ironic because I'm now talking about it on a conference in front of lots of people. So the way I've pulled this one apart is testers often complain about, I've used the example as requirements, but they often also complain about the quality of the test that they're given, the environments that they're working in, the hours that they've got, the way the squad is built, how often they're having to test. There's many things that they complain and get worried about. I would say not necessarily not to complain about them, but I would try and do something about that problem. So if you are constantly receiving like a poor quality requirement into your sprint planning sessions, use testing techniques, use your BDD and your TDD, use logical and critical thinking to assess those requirements and provide constructive feedback back into the team to improve them, to make your life easier so they're easier to test. Don't just be a victim of it. Try to be active as much as you're possible, and again, control what you can. I'm hoping that at this point it's all sounding great, but like improve it, Steve. So these are 3 examples that I've pulled across. I've got actually tons more, but these are from actual things that happened throughout my testing career. I'm not going to talk about names or individuals or clients or anything of that nature. I'm just going to talk about the scenario and what I could have done and what I didn't do, and then what I did do as a Stoic, if that makes any sense. So scenario 1, there was a critical bug in production, and it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday. So as you can imagine, most people wanted to leave and go home at this point. Nobody really wanted to work. It's the weekend and it's a nice sunny day ahead of us. So what could I have done as a non-Stoic? A non-Stoic could have complained, kicked off, not worked it. Why has this happened to me? Woe is me that this has happened. I can't believe this has happened. Can't we come back to it on Monday, etc., etc. And that's what a non-Stoic could have done. What would a Stoic do in that scenario? I focus on what I can control and I work the problem. Okay, what's the nature of the bug? Where did it happen? What part of the release does it break? Are there any things effective? What's our rollback policy? Can we get that bug out? How quickly can we turn it around? How many users are impacted? Do a root cause analysis of that bug and then put some remedial action in place to roll that back and reduce the risks to the end users. So care about what the end users care about, get them a quality thing if I can. That's how I did at that scenario. It did mean I had a very long day on the Friday, but it worked by the end of it. Scenario number 2. Again, this is I'm assuming this must be incredibly common for any testers on the call, but requirements change mid-sprint and your test approach is impacted. So let me use the example of a massive UI change to a kind of servicing application, which would provide people's service details, so things like their history, their date of birth, all these kinds of things, and how their service would be catered to those specific details. I think financial services kind of environment. What would a non-Stoic do in this scenario? A non-Stoic would say, this invalidates all our tests. We've wasted our time. We can't get this done by the end of the sprint. You're asking something unrealistic of us, etc., etc. And again, I'm not expecting people not to think these things. I'm expecting you to just consider them before you act. So what would a Stoic do? So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to update my approach. I'm going to actually go, okay, we've completely changed the UI design. That's going to have an impact on all the tests that I've already written and produced. That's unfortunate, but it is what it is. But let's maybe use this opportunity now that I'm looking at my test cases and seeing which ones I can and can't reuse, which ones I have to change. Why not just look at my whole test approach right now as an opportunity and see where I could improve it, so where I could tweak it, see where I could maybe make it agnostic to any changes like that happening in the future, impacting the way it's implemented. Maybe I can come up with a better approach that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do if had this issue not happened in the first place. So look for the win. And then the last scenario, which is the test environment crashes at a critical test. So you're on a VM, you're in a testing environment, and the environment kicks you out in the middle of a very long, laborious, let's say it's a manual test case. It's a very long test. You're 20 minutes in, you've got another 10, 15 minutes to run, and the environment falls over, and you lose all of your test data. You lose all of your progress, all of your results, all gone. You have to do everything from scratch. What would a non-tester do? Non-tester worries me. This is terrible. I'm just not going to bother. I'm just going to write it up. I'll do it next week. It wasn't that much of an important test anyway, etc., etc., etc. What would a Stoic do? I'd remain calm. Like, instead of just going, well, I'm going to have to repeat the test, can I understand why that environment crashed? Can I provide any feedback to the infrastructure team or the support teams to help them work the problem? Can I prevent this from affecting my fellow testers or other people who use the environment in the future? Again, use that as an opportunity. Use this problem as an opportunity to help other people and help myself instead of just accepting it as it is. Mainly focus on things that I can control. I can't control how that environment was built. I can't control the documentation that was produced over the years for it. I can't control how it's configured to some degree. Those things are out of my control. Just focusing on things that I can. How well that root cause analysis is, and how I talk to individuals and the rest of the team. There's one of the questions I get asked off the back of every time I've run this talk is recommended reading. Unfortunately, there's no Stoic testing literature or books that I could find in the market, although I am potentially working on one of those. So instead, I've tried to pull 3 recommended novels or books for people to read if they're interested in applying Stoicism, and also they can reach out to me directly, which we'll get to in a second, about how you can apply Stoicism in a bit more detail to your testing practices and improve the ways that you work. The first one is a book called Ego as the Enemy, which is very well read by a modern Stoic called Ryan Holiday. It takes the principle of your ego is one of the main problems that we have as individuals. If I take that as a tester, if I take that and make that about testing, as a tester, we often get very defensive about the terminology that's used about us, the language that's used about the things that we do. We don't like people telling us how things should be done because they're not testers. Our ego gets very riled up by that, and that can lead to negative outcomes and interactions with other people. The second one is a much more heavy duty, but an absolutely incredible book, which is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which is a self-reflecting novel that he wrote to himself thousands of years ago. So it was never actually intended to be read. And if you read it, it doesn't read like a book I've ever read before. It's someone's diary to themselves. So again, how does this apply to testing, and why would I care about it? One of the things I try to do as a Stoic and as a tester is I start out my day and I try and list out the things that I'm going to try and achieve today and why they're important and why I'm doing them. And at the end of the day, I write everything down that I've done in that day in short form in a journal, and I reflect on, have I prioritized and used my time the best I can? Have I wasted time when I shouldn't done? What should I prioritize for the next day? So putting myself up for review and removing my ego and really critiquing myself and the work that I've been doing. And the last one, which is a book I've read quite recently, which is How to Think Like a Roman Emperor by Donald Robertson from the UK. This is another very good book. It's basically how to read Meditations and the other Stoic philosophy texts that produced over the years, because obviously written in a very different language and dialect to what we're used to in the modern world. And he kind of breaks down Stoic principles and best practices and helps you understand it. How does that relate to testing? I think testing can be very overwhelming if you are new to it. Even if you're very experienced, there's an incredible amount to learn. There's types of testing that you've never heard of before. There's methodologies you've never come across. There's approaches. There's models. There's frameworks. There's languages. There's tools. Tons of things that we aren't aware of or limited understanding of. What that book does and how it helps you in testing is breaking apart very complex, very heavy duty ideas and constructs and breaking them down into more manageable chunks to help you understand and implement them. So if you take the approach that he outlines in the book, it's actually very helpful to say, I'm going to pick up a new language. How do I learn and implement that language for the benefit of my team? It actually creates quite a nice structure of how to pick apart something very complicated like that and make it very simple and applicable to your kind of day-to-day life. I hope those recommendations are enjoyable for anybody, and feel free to message me about any others in the future. And maybe if I can eventually write that book, you might see mine up on here. We've got about 5 minutes left for the session, so I'll open it up for some questions. And I think the host has also got some already If you want to contact me, just to caveat that as well, if you want to contact me, probably the easiest way is on LinkedIn. I'll go under the handle of the Stoic Tester. That's my LinkedIn profile, so I'll leave it up for a second. I also feature on for Inspired Testing, which is a software testing company out of South Africa. We're also based in the UK heavily. I work for them as a principal consultant, and we have our own podcast called Testing Experts with Opinions. If you also go across to our website, you'll see blog articles and newsletters and posts that me and the rest of my team have produced upon how Inspired Testing tackles testing. I also try and comment all the things that I produce from the perspective of the Stoicisms that I've just talked about today. Nalina, have we got any questions?
Thank you, Stephen, for that wonderful presentation. I will definitely be looking into those book recommendations. But yes, we do have a couple of questions, so let's jump right into that and have a look. How do you know what to worry about during testing and what not to?
Okay. Yeah, so again, if you go back to the dichotomy of control in Stoicism, which is I only focus on the things I can control. So what should I worry about? What should I worry about during testing and what not to? What can I control and what can't I? What can I influence and what can't I? Something I didn't talk about in the talk, but I'll mention it now, is a Stoic principle called preferred indifference. As much as I would love a requirement to come in and it'd be really well written and very easy to test, often it isn't. So I have prepared indifference. I would prefer for that requirement to be very well written and easy to understand, but I accept if it isn't. What can I control? I can control how I test that requirement. I can control how I read it. I can control the interaction I have with the person, with the business analyst or whoever wrote it, and then use that to think that I worry about that interaction, that communication, that test that I want to do. That's the thing I worry about. I don't worry about the fact that it's actually bad in the first place because I don't control that because I didn't write it. And same thing with architecture. The architecture doesn't make sense. It's very difficult to test this API to this API. I didn't design the architecture. I didn't build the architecture. I don't worry about how it's been built. I worry about how I can get around the problem of that connection and how to test it. Hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you so much. Let's have a look at another question that we have. How do you manage working with people that aren't Stoic or are a challenge to work with?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, this is another common question I get. So if you read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, one of the first lines he has in the first part of the book is, when you wake up in the morning, expect the people that you're going to work with to be rude, unpleasant, abrupt, not nice, etc. Right? Expect to be interacting with people that aren't very nice to talk to. He's not saying that because everyone is like that, but he's saying in reality, those people exist and always will exist and always have existed. So as a Stoic, I don't expect people to act in a Stoic way or to understand Stoicism because they aren't. I expect them to be who they are and have the experiences and the values and the things that they consider and care about. If I make that about testing, I really care about the quality of a product, but I can't make a client or somebody else care about quality in the same way that I do. And that's totally fine because we're coming at it from two different perspectives. What I can do is try and illustrate my perspective and viewpoint and try and meet them in the middle between theirs so we can come up with some kind of agreement and kind of marrying between the 2 points, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And then I think let's have a look at another question. What is the key takeaways from your talk?
Yeah, I think the testing market or the testing as a career has always been under, I don't want to say threat, it's probably a strong term. It's always been a very challenging place to work because the speed at which we do our thing and the way that we do things has changed massively. If you think about the onset of automation, the changes of life cycles, the changing of methodologies, how APIs change how we do things, how websites and other things are constructed have changed so much over the years within IT that our jobs have had to completely redefine themselves on almost a yearly, if not a 6-month basis. The advent of AI is only going to accelerate that, right? So how you use AI and implement AI and test AI is going to be something you're going to have to get to grips with. My key takeaway from my talk is don't be a passenger. Don't let the wave hit you and just carry you away. Understand the wave's going to come. I can't stop the wave from coming. I can't stop the progress. I can't stop the change. I'm going to focus on the things I can control. So if I take AI as an example for testing, what can I control? I can't control that AI might replace certain roles and the way certain things are done. I can control how much I understand about it, how many books I read on AI, how many blog articles I read, how much testing of AI I do, how many different AIs I've used, how many courses I've completed on AI, right? How much do I know about that subject matter? So when it does come, I'm prepared enough to equip myself and adapt with those changes. A key takeaway would be think about those things that are coming and focus on what you can control so you're not overwhelmed by that problem when it occurs.
This was really an amazing presentation, and thank you, Stephen, for being part of the Testing Summit. With this said, we have come to the end of this session, and if you have any additional questions, please pop them in the chat. We can pass it along to Stephen, and he can then provide you a little bit more insight into the topics. And then also stay tuned for our next sessions that we've coming up. This presentation and the rest of the presentations that we've had during the day and coming up will be available afterwards on our testingsummit.com website, as well as our social media platforms. And then just another reminder to vote for this presentation. We have the best speaker and the best presentation award. So go to testingsummit.com and submit your nominations for this presentation. And Stephen, thank you so much for being part, and to everybody watching and who's joined us, thank you very much, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Elaine.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Software testers. Move beyond theory and master testing with the AI-powered ISTQB add-on Practical Tester by A4Q program. The ISTQB add-on Practical Tester by A4Q equips you with the theoretical skills and practical competence to truly excel. Learn how to apply black box testing like a pro. Estimate accurately, write flawless defect reports, and catch issues early. The ISTQB add-on Practical Tester by A4Q complements your ISTQB certification by turning knowledge into powerful action. Visit our website and find out more information.